What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Zero Lab. Today, we're taking a look at the top 5 TCG Pocket decks based on the online tournament results, and thanks goes to PokeHive over on X for compiling all of this data. They do a great job. Go follow their account if you want to take a look at all of the tournament data from our online tournaments for TCG Pocket as well as the IRL TCG. They're doing a great job of compiling a lot of data over there. So moving on to our number 5 of the top 5 decks in TCG Pocket right now, based on online tournament results, we have Arcanine EX. Arcanine EX has the Inferno Onrush attack for 2 fire and a colorless. It does 120 damage, and this Pokemon also does 20 damage to itself. Now, 3 fire energy can be pretty tough to get on by manually attaching, but luckily we have the Moltres EX with that Inferno Dance attack, where we flip 3 coins and take an amount of fire energy from our energy zone equal to the number of heads and attach it to our bench fire Pokemon in any way that we like. So we can power up our Growlithe with that Moltres EX. Then we have 2 Sabrinas in here, obviously for switching out our opponent's active Pokemon. We have a Giovanni to increase the amount of damage we're doing, so Inferno Onrush can hit 130. And then we have Research to draw 2 cards, obviously great draw support in the game, 2 Pokeballs at 2x speeds to maneuver out of our active spot, 2 potions, and then we have Old Amber as a fossil card. This can just tank a hit for us early in the game so that we don't end up with damage on our Growlithe or our Moltres, and then we can just discard it from play at any time. You play fossils as a basic Pokemon, and they can be discarded from play at any time, but they cannot retreat. And then we have 1 red card in here to round out the list. Take a look at the data for this. This has been a deck that's sort of been up and coming right now. It has only 2% representation in the meta right now, but it has a 50.6% win rate. And when we go down the chart of its wins, you'll see that Pikachu EX Electrode, it has a 79% win rate into. It's got a high win rate into Pikachu and Raichu, Pikachu Zapdos, and Venusaur, obviously, as well, all of those boasting 60% win rates. It's got a 59% win rate into the Pikachu Zebstrika deck, which was for a while the best way to play Pikachu, and then it has a good win rate into the Ninetales and Arbok decks. Things get a little bit tougher for it when we get further down in the list. The water deck, Starmie and Articuno, is slightly unfavored, and then it seems to be very unfavored into Charizard EX Moltres EX and Mewtwo EX Gardevoir. Now, it is a problem that it's unfavored into Mewtwo because Mewtwo is also one of the best decks in the format, but this deck having a good win rate into the Pikachu decks puts it in a pretty good spot, and I think it makes it fairly underrated right now, and I do expect to see its meta share to start taking up a bit, especially now that we have the Fire event going on, which is making it easier for people to get their hands on their Arcanine EXs. Moving on to our number 4 deck, then it is a Charizard EX. This deck is very similar to the Arcanine, as we are using the Moltres EX to power up our attackers, but instead of playing the Arcanine, we're playing Charizard EX, which has 180 HP, and that Crimson Storm attack for 2 fire and 2 colorless does 200 damage, which means it's one-shotting anything in the game, and then you discard 2 fire energy from it. So we're trying to build up our hand so that we can evolve into our Charmeleons, then into our Charizards, and use that Inferno Dance for the first few turns of the game on that Moltres EX to power up our Charizards. Once you have a Charizard powered up with 5 or 6 energy, there's nothing in the game that one-shots it, and it's one-shotting everything else. The only things in the game that one-shot it are other Charizard EXs and Blastoise if it has 5 water energy on it. That's fairly unlikely. So once you get a Charizard EX powered up, it's one-shotting everything, and you're basically winning the game from there. The question is, can you evolve up into it fast enough to get that win? And obviously, got to be flipping a few heads on that Moltres Inferno Dance as well. This deck does play one of the non-EX Charizards. It has that Fire Spin attack. It's the same attack as Crimson Storm, just does 50 less damage, but hitting for 150 is fine. That knocks out all of the basic EXs in the game and most of the stage 1s. In fact, all of the stage 1s, I believe, it will knock out. So looking at the tournament data for this deck, has a 6.7% representation, a 50.75% win rate, and as we go down the list, you'll see that it is favored into basically all of the rogue decks of Plus and Mewtwo. So as we go down the list, favored into Marowak, favored into Venusaur, favored into Ninetales, favored into Arcanine, favored into Arbok, and then favored into Mewtwo, which is huge because, again, we've talked about Mewtwo is a very good deck in the format right now. Unfortunately, slightly unfavored or very unfavored into the rest of the meta, which is all the Pikachu decks and the various forms and the water decks. So Charizard in a very good spot, and I think what would make it better if we had some evolution search in the game, I think it would probably be favored into the Pikachu decks. But they're just so fast. If you don't find your evolutions quickly enough, they're just going to steamroll you, and your Moltres are weak to those lightning attackers, which is unfortunate. Moving on to our number 3 deck, we have Starmie Articuno. Starmie, a very strong attacker in the game. For only 2 water energy, it does 90, and it has free retreat. And then Articuno has that Blizzard attack for 3 water energy, it does 80, and then 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this is a very fast and consistent deck. As long as you're flipping 1 or 2 heads on your Misties, you're in a good spot. Obviously, we played 2 Misty in here, 2 Research, 2 Giovanni, 2 Sabrina, 2 Pokeball, 2 Potion, an X Speed, and a red card. Yeah, I think this deck is very good. And taking a look at the tournament data, it only has 3.2% representation, but it boasts a 53.26% win rate. As we look at the matchups, though, you'll see why it kind of falls behind. It seems to be favored, at least slightly, into everything in the meta. Favored into Charizard, Ninetales, Marowak, Arbok, Venusaur, Arcanine, and Mewtwo. Then we get to the bottom of the list where we have the 4 varieties of Pikachu decks, and we are unfavored into all of those. So Pikachu being probably the best deck in the format right now. Unfortunately, this has a bad matchup into Pikachu in all of its various forms, but a good matchup into almost everything else in the meta. And having that lightning weakness on Starmie and Articuno both doesn't really help that matchup a ton, obviously. So very good deck as long as you are avoiding the Pikachus. Moving on to our number 2 deck, and though we have Mewtwo EX with that Gardevoir. Gardevoir has the Psy Shadow ability that says once during your turn, you may take a Psychic Energy from your Energy Zone and attach it to the Psychic Pokemon in the active spot. And then Mewtwo EX has that powerful Psy Drive attack for 2 Psychic and 2 Colorless. Does 150 damage, and you discard 2 Psychic Energy from this Pokemon. Obviously, the name of the game here is getting up into our Gardevoir as fast as we can, so we can start accelerating extra Psychic Energies into play to be attacking with that Mewtwo EX. And really where this deck can fall behind is in those games where you're not finding your Curlius and Gardevoirs early enough, and you're just forced to manually attach to that Mewtwo. You just can't quite get ahead in the prize trade if you are going up against things like against Pikachu and Articuno, if they're getting their attacks off very quickly and consistently, and you're not finding those evolutions to make sure you're able to side drive quickly in the game. But taking a look at the tournament data for Mewtwo, has a 26.9% representation in the meta and a 54.4% win rate. If we take a look at all of its matchups, it is favored into Arcanine, Marowak, Venusaur, Ninetales, and the Pikachu Zebstrika. And it's pretty much even into all of the Pikachu decks. Honestly, I think it's about 50-50 into all the Pikachu decks. Some of this data can get skewed a little bit. It's looking to be slightly favored into Pikachu Zebstrika, but I think you could just say Mewtwo's pretty much 50-50 into the Pikachu decks. And then slightly unfavored into Starmie Articuno, slightly unfavored into Charizard, and then very unfavored into Arbok Weezing because of that dark weakness. But overall, a very, 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 very strong deck. I think if you tweak the list a little bit, maybe we've been seeing people play the Jinx, we've been seeing people play the Kangaskhan as just these early one-prize attackers in the matchup or in the deck while you power up and evolve up those Ralts, Curlias, and eventually those Gardevoirs so that you can start utilizing the Mewtwo EX. So I think this is a very good deck in the format. Obviously, the number 2 deck in the format right now. That means we know what the number 1 deck in the format right now is, and that is Pikachu EX. Now, this might not be a list that you were expecting, but of all the different types of Pikachu EX decks, this actually boasted the highest win rate of all of them based on the PokeHive data on X. So this has a 2-2 Electrode line in it. It's got a 2-2 Pikachu Raichu line in it with that Thunderbolt attack on the Raichu where you, for 3 lightning energy, you can do 140 on a 1-prizer, but you have to discard all of the energy from this Pokemon. And then obviously, we have 2 Pikachu EXs with that Circle Circuit attack, doing 30 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. Just a great attack, usually doing 90 for just 2 lightning energy on a basic. And then 1 Zapdos EX with that Peck Attack for 20, and then the Thundering Hurricane for 3 Lightning, where you flip 4 coins and you do 50 for each heads that you flip. Rounding out the list, we have 2 Giovanni and 2 Research, 2 Pokeball, 1 Potion, 1 X Speed, and then one of these Lieutenant Surge supporter cards, which says move all lightning energy from your bench Pokemon to your Raichu, Electrode, or Electabuzz in the active spot. So as we go throughout the game, we're powering up a bunch of different attackers. We can retreat out of them pretty easily with that X Speed, and then we can use the Lieutenant Surge to move all that energy that we want to the Raichu and do 140 damage on a 1-prize attacker. That can kind of skew the prize trade for us. So that can be very, very, very strong. So taking a look at the data for this deck, it's only got a 6% representation in the meta, but it does have the highest win rate of all the different Pikachu EX decks. And we've seen a lot of different lists for Pikachu EX, so we could go online and take a look at all of the other types of Pikachu you could run. But I chose this for today because it did boast the highest win rate of all the Pikachu EX decks, although they were all over 50% win rate, so any of them would be pretty good. But Pikachu EX with the Raichu in it has a favored matchup into Pikachu EX with Electrode, has a favored matchup into Charizard Moltres, is favored into Starmie Articuno, favored into Marowak Sandslash, favored into Pikachu Zebstrika, favored into Arbok, and then it's 50-50 into Ninetales, Mewtwo, and then the Pikachu EX Zapdos EX deck. So really the only 2 unfavored matchups for it based on the tournament data. Obviously there's not a ton of data for the Venusaur Executor EX matchup, but that one seems to be unfavored, and then the new Arcanine EX Moltres EX deck that people have been playing seems to be slightly unfavored, or very unfavored into that. But we saw that Arcanine deck was only about 2% of the meta, so not bad to have your worst matchup be something that's only 2% of the meta. So those are our top 5 decks in TCG Pocket right now. We'll take a look at this last graphic, just showing over the course of 23 tournaments, there were 6,000 total players, and then we can see the meta share based on that. So the 25% of the meta was other decks, 26.9% of the meta was Mewtwo, 12.6% of the meta was Pikachu Zebstrika, 6.7% of the meta was Charizard, and we can take a look at all of those other decks and what percentage of the meta they took up. Now on the right side then we have our top cut. So there were 543 top cut players, and of that top cut, Mewtwo Gardevoir had an increased share from its 26.9% share in the first phase of these limitless tournaments to being 31.1% of the top cut. And then we saw Pikachu Zebstrika also increasing from 12.6% to 15.5%. And then Charizard also increased from 6.7% of the first phase into being 9.6% of the top cut. So all these decks doing very, very well, and cool to see a breakdown of the meta in sort of this pie chart here. So hopefully you guys found this video very informative and interesting. Hopefully it helps you figure out what you want to play in your next online tournament, or what decks you want to start chasing down the cards to pull to build that deck. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.